Welcome everyone, my name is Adam. Welcome to the Irish Startup Conference 2021 sponsored by Kalc Accounting. So just to introduce myself, I'm Adam from Startup Network Europe and I'm co-hosting this event with Jen from AFIXR. And our plan today is very simple. It's going to be a 90-minute event with over 30 speakers, and we'll have opening remarks first from Sean Piggott of Kalc Accounting, our sponsor, Martina Fitzgerald, CEO of Scale Ireland, and then we'll have Gillian from the Irish Venture Capital Association. Then we're going to have Silicon Docs Rapid Fire Talks with 13 speakers, mostly based in Ireland. Then we'll have a Silicon Valley panel discussion with 8 speakers, mostly in the United States or with experience in the United States. And then we'll have a Silicon Island panel discussion. And for that, we're going to have 7 speakers. We're going to talk about startup supports across Ireland. And then we'll have a Q&A, so we're going to open up the chats and you can interact with all the speakers. Just to start off the event, Sean, we'll hear from you about Kalc Accounting, what it is you do.
Okay, so again, thank you to all of the attendees, obviously, and to the guys, obviously, that have put the event together, both Jen and Adam, for organising such a great event. To introduce Kalc, again, we're delighted to be the sponsors of the event, like I say, but to introduce us, I suppose, I'm going to go through a couple of things that make us different to your traditional accountancy firm. We provide digital accountancy services and advisory services to companies ranging from startup all the way through to large multinational enterprise clients. And rather than spending the 2 minutes talking about what we do, I'm going to spend the 2 minutes, I suppose, speaking about what we do differently. So essentially our business model was designed to disrupt the financial services sector, where we tailor make packages to suit each individual client and obviously to address any of their needs. Outside of that, again, we've kind of gone against the traditional accountancy firm that you come across on your high street, and we've used technology to help benefit our business. So we're really embracing technology. By doing that, basically, and by placing technology at the forefront of our business offering, we're able to give business owners more time to focus on what they do best, essentially. So we look after everything else in the background, and we use digital assets and investments to do that. Again, we have a team of experts all in-house who are here to provide proactive support to all of our clients. And again, it's from all companies ranging from the startup phase right through growth all the way to sale and acquisition, depending on obviously what you're trying to do. I know Adam is going to share a link to our follow-up webinar that we have organised for Accountancy 101 for Irish startups next week. So if anyone is interested in joining and asking any questions that they may have, we'd be delighted to see you there. Separately, if anyone would like to reach out to discuss how we can assist your business from a payroll perspective all the way through to managing a financial statement, whatever the case may be, if you want to reach out directly to myself, I'd be delighted, and I'll organise a call essentially around your availability. So thanks again to all of the attendees for joining us. Thanks again to the event organisers, both Adam and Jen. And I'm really excited to be here, obviously, and to hear all of the very accomplished speakers that we've got here today. So again, delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
Cheers, really appreciate that. And I can see now we have 561 people connected. So we're going to start now with Martina Fitzgerald, who is the CEO of Scale Ireland.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you, Adam, Jen, and all the team, because this is a terrific event, and I suppose it reflects the sector. It's dynamic, it's energetic, and it's packed full of people. So well done to you. And Scale Ireland also has a very strong remit. We represent, we support, and we advocate on behalf of Irish tech startup and scale-up companies. And Scale Ireland is a relatively new organisation. It was set up in 2019 with a specific objective: to give Indigenous tech startup and scale-ups a voice, because many founders felt they weren't being heard, and as a result, their issues were not being addressed. So in 2019, Liz McCarthy, a tour de force herself, on Voxify now and still in association with us, Brian Caulfield, who spent 30 years founding, funding and mentoring companies, including many who are on today, and Patrick Walsh from Dogpatch Labs came together and set up Dogpatch. So what do we do? Well, first of all, we represent startup and scale-up companies. So we bring to the fore and engage with stakeholders on key issues like the current situation where many early stage startups are struggling to gain a private investment. We also commission research on key issues to help you. We provide supports and information Especially during COVID-19, we engage with stakeholders on how to adapt the supports, and we also promote the sector, and that's where we're participating here. And we are building a community through our Slack community with 500 members and more, and officially launching on the 11th of May. I'd like to put a plug in there. So this is a good news story with a good news, a good sector, promoting jobs, innovation and exports, what the OECD wants SMEs to be doing. And we want to highlight that and to alert our members to all the trends, all the policy issues, all the regulations, and all the news with peer-to-peer advice and information as we get it. So welcome aboard to us, and delighted to be involved, and congratulations, Adam.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much, Martina. And it's great to see all the work that Scale Ireland is doing for startups in Ireland. And now we have next Gillian from the Irish Venture Capital Association.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm chairperson of the Irish Venture Capital Association this year. My day job is I manage an investment fund that focuses on the west of Ireland and invests in startups and scale-ups. So I was asked to say, what's the current funding landscape in Ireland? What are we doing well and what could we do better? So overall, our members invest in companies like yourselves at very early stage, seed and early venture capital, and also more recently private equity, which is a huge increase in the importance of the role in the funding landscape. Our figures for 2020 show that over 9 million, which is quite a significant amount of money, but the data also highlights that the top 10 deals took 50% of that money. So we have seen a huge decline in very early stage projects. Some of that was COVID related, but that's always been a very difficult sector. And I know you know this because you're at the cold face of trying to raise that seed in very early stage funding. So I think we've done an incredible amount in this country, but we have to keep going with the early stage investment. We need that deal flow coming through, and we need projects that are venture capital ready and venture capital investable. So one of the things we feel that from an Irish Inc. perspective, we think the state does a great job. There is a lot of supports for the venture capital industry and for SMEs directly through Enterprise Ireland and the ISIF. But we do feel that there is a lot more to be done to mobilise private investment and private capital. That has a double whammy of being able to leverage out the government money, but also in its own right, more investment for people who will then see a return from the investment. There'll be more jobs and greater wealth in the company. It's a virtuous circle. So two of the areas we were very much, and we've been working with Scale Ireland and other organisations like HPAN to try and influence the government around policy areas. Two particular areas is the reform of the EIS. We really feel that there's a lot of, it's not really fit for purpose. It doesn't really encourage a lot of people to invest in high risk startups like yourselves, and more could be done that to mobilise smaller amounts of capital. A lot of people investing a small amount can make a very significant difference. We also feel that there's a huge opportunity in the proposed auto-enrollment around pension schemes. And again, small amounts of money from an awful lot of people could make a huge difference. It will be the workers of today investing for their long-term future and the long-term job creation. We don't have, unfortunately, we're such a nascent economy, really. We are talking about only a handful of decades that we've moved from an agrarian society into a knowledge-based economy. We don't have the depth of institutional and pension and corporate investors that other countries have. So we need to try and leverage that out more.
Great, thank you very much. Folks, now we're going to move on to the next section, which will be moderated by Jen, and it's called the Silicon Docs Rapid Fire Talks. Jen, maybe you can speak a bit about it.
Thanks, Adam. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Right. Greetings all. This is a jam-packed lineup for anyone who has seen the agenda, so let's get right to it. We've tailored the format around time-restricted founders and teams for today's event, so the goal being to showcase and give you, the audience, access to practical tips and trends, insights from some of the best startups and founders coming out of Ireland, and to help you in your startup or startup aspirations. So for the first session, we're speaking with Ireland-based startups and companies, talking time as a valuable and scarce commodity, the impact of the events the past year, practical tips, observations, and ideas for anyone starting out or working to improve efficiencies in their startup. I'll very briefly introduce speakers, but for any potentially, VCs or business support organizations, journalists, clients or collaborators listening in, you can make a note to follow up with the different speakers afterwards, or we would invite you to. We'll be moving swiftly through the sessions to keep to time, but don't worry, we are recording and we'll share the webinar in case you've missed anything. And also, I know Adam and the team are updating links in the chat section throughout, so keep an eye on that. So the question for the first session, which we are posing to all of our speakers, is broadly looking back now after more than a year of working through COVID and working tirelessly to grow your business in lockdown. What is your biggest learning from 2020 and top tip for moving forward in 2021? So on that note, I'm going to ask, first up, we have Ryan from DropChef. It's an Irish meal kit delivery service providing healthy meal kits with locally sourced ingredients to locations across Ireland. Over to you, Ryan.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me, Jen and Adam. Yeah, it's really cool to be here. Yeah, hello to everybody else. I really struggled and racked my brain over the last few weeks to think about something that was going to be universally true and applicable to everybody here, regardless of their industry, sector, the stage of their business, or whatever else, how be it for them. And I think I got there on one piece, and that was, I guess over the last year, we've seen a huge amount of new words and new terms come about, and also we have done over the last few decades, whether it's putting an E before the word and saying it's now e-commerce or e-grocery, or whether it's remote working and thinking that working remotely just means, turning up to work in a pair of pajamas and a shirt at the top, or whether it's attending a conference. Likewise, I think for me, the important learnings here are that when we do look at changing the format or changing the mode, that we also look at changing the business model behind it. And for me, a few good examples of businesses everybody obviously knows about are wildly successful, but they're not just successful because they've taken something online. For example, Netflix didn't just bring Extravision online or Blockbuster online. They actually changed the business model and they went subscription, and it was entirely new model and way of doing things. And as COVID has pushed so many more businesses online, the idea here isn't that you just simply take your existing model, whether it's even grocery, that might be more applicable for DropChef, and we say, okay, well, we just deliver everything you need to cook that dinner now to you. We've actually changed the model, and we know that we're delivering to our customers every week, and we need to hit them each week, and they eat dinner every night of the week. We can work on those assumptions to drive a model that is more efficient, so we can deliver stuff that's fresher, cheap, better valued, and a better overall customer experience for our customers. And I guess, looking outwards at other iterations of this, you can see Spotify isn't just golden discs, but online. Golden discs had a shot. They could have done it, but they didn't. The same if it's Dollar Shave Club, isn't just selling Gillette razors online. They changed the model as well. And I think the final example would probably be this conference. This isn't a full day long conference. What you guys have managed to do is you managed to take reformat it, I guess, and also change the way it worked, and I guess engage with the startups in a far more dynamic way than I guess maybe would have been possible with a traditional conference.
Thank you, Ryan. Very good. Just a reminder to everyone, we will have a Q&A at the end, all going to plan. So if you have questions, maybe to make a note, there will be a possibility of adding or asking questions later on in the webinar. So moving swiftly along to Alison at East Coast Bakehouse. It's an Irish biscuit company available in 26 plus countries worldwide. But I imagine you will know Alison, who is involved in a number of different companies and initiatives. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Alison.
Thanks, Jen, and great to be here, and great to see everybody online. I suppose we're coming at this from a very traditional industry. The food industry has been around for millennia and has really developed I would say, pretty slowly in the technology space. What we've learned over the last year is that we can take a large-scale food startup and I suppose kill a lot of those sacred cows that exist around what you need to do in the food business to succeed, particularly around customer engagement. Food fairs, trade shows have been traditionally the way of meeting international customers. That's all been stopped over the last year, clearly. What we've done is we've gone really to a technology play on that, and we are now attending a lot of our trade fairs online. The technology and the AI that's being used in some of these platforms is particularly good. It's not as good as meeting people face to face, but it certainly it gets you along the way. It gets you to meet great customers, great prospects. And it avoids all the tar kickers. So you really only get to see the people who really want to see you, unlike a trade show where you're constantly being barraged by people who simply want product samples and they have no intention of actually doing business with you. So we found that really, really positive. We've also moved online. For the first time, we're selling online with our own website. We put a video virtual tour of our large bakehouse, which is something that we wouldn't have done before. We're now dealing with even some of our audits and our new customer visits online. It would have been crazy 15 months ago to suggest that one of our biggest retail customers would do their audit online without being actually in our factory. That has happened, and that's been a learning that I think we should move on and hopefully gain all of those positives in the future and not have to do it face-to-face all over again as we move forward. What we've also really learned is the importance of local. We've seen a huge interest in consumers, food consumers looking to buy local, supporting local jobs and local businesses. And we've seen retailers responding to that demand. As Jim Power, a local economist here in Ireland, has said, the new mantra for communities now is buy local or buy local, as consumers begin to realise that their purchasing power can and will sustain local jobs in their communities if they continue to buy local. So we're amplifying all of our Baked in Ireland messaging across all of our consumer facing brand strategy over the next forever, to be honest, because it's something that we see as being sustained. The food consumer has had 15 months to think about what they eat, their approach to food, what they want to cook, what to order, and we now need to be in a position to respond to those trends ASAP, right now, instantly. When we're asked to do something different, we need to respond with a resounding yes, because the reality for the food business is it has been changed forever. There is no going back to the way we were, and this is the new normal. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alison. Buy local or buy local. I hadn't heard that before. It's pretty powerful. Thank you. Rosanne from Coroflo, a startup which has developed Coro, a revolutionary breastfeeding monitor so mothers can know exactly how much milk their baby is getting. Over to you.
Hi, Jen and Adam. Thanks. Great event. I have my stopwatch here. So I think our biggest obstacle this year, over the last year, was around just the physical logistics of getting to work and getting into the premises. So we have a very highly spec'd clinical lab and offices, and we were part of an innovation centre that actually completely locked down during the first lockdown, even though we were eligible to continue working. So there was a mix of businesses there. When they reopened under level 3, it was only a partial reopening and we were really restricted. So we knew at best this was going to really impact our development runway. And at worst, if the lockdown was, put back in place again, that we would be brought to a halt completely again. So within a week, we identified, viewed, secured new premises and moved lock, stock and barrel. And this seemed a little drastic at the time because it was last August. We were looking at, we all believed we were over the worst of COVID-19. However, subsequent lockdowns have validated that risk mitigation decision. So I would encourage any of the startups out there to always question what you can do to potentially offset risk in the future. Our top tip, it would probably be to make your connections now. So connections that where you might have had to badger somebody for months to get a meeting, or in fact spend thousands of euros, flying somewhere to meet somebody and trying to get in front of them. You can do that now far more easily than before. So COVID has been kind of a great equalizer in terms of the C-suite and people who could expedite your journey. So for me, it definitely has worked for particularly people on the West Coast in the States and China, but I don't think I could have accessed before. COVID has allowed us to get in touch with them. So yeah, I think it's a good time to make connections if we're still under lockdown for a few more months.
Thank you, Rosanne. Bang on the money. Perfect timing. Thank you. On to Sean of Micron Agritech. Micron Agritech, it's an agricultural technology company that has developed an innovative portable technology that allows farmers and vets to rapidly detect parasites in production animals.
Hey Jen, thanks very much for the intro. So yeah, the biggest learning for us and me, I suppose after making it through last year, really came from making the decision to actually bring a lot of processes that we had outsourced in-house. So obviously when COVID hit at the start of the year, we were trying to run as lean as possible. We had a lot of things outsourced in terms of product development, software development, and hardware development. And, our suppliers then faced significant delays due to COVID, which obviously delayed us as well. I think it's probably a challenge faced by many of the other startups sitting here. So we took the decision to start, actually expanding our core team, bringing a lot of the things that we had outsourced in-house. And, it turned out really, we ended up having more control then over our processes. We probably saved time and saved money, all the while, we actually have experts in-house now. So they're generating value and generating IP for the business. It worked out well then for our fundraising last year. It was key metrics some of the investors were looking for, seeing actually the team growing and seeing the number of employees increasing. So that was really a key learning. So I guess to summarize, the top tip is, if you're faced with the decision between making a key hire or working with, say, a consultancy or outsourcing something, I think long term you'll generate a lot more value for your business by, making that sort of commitment and taking in the hire.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. On to Sonia from Pestle and Mortar, an award-winning Irish skincare company.
Thank you, Jen. So we didn't really have to change anything fundamental, which is why I think we've thrived through this. Our mission stayed relevant because it is simple. We exist to make people look and feel their best every day. We do this by blending science with nature to create simple skincare products that work. So our team was aligned around a central mission, which meant that we still knew where we were going, and we didn't have to do a major or massive pivot. We just had to re-navigate the route a little, which was by upping our online game, which I think is applicable to a lot of businesses. Our old website had served us well, but we knew that we needed to get it to e-commerce gold standard if we were going to survive and thrive. So that's exactly what we did. I think my biggest learning from 2020 is that great messaging is everything. When people understand why your brand matters to their lives and your team understands how their job makes a difference, you're in a very strong position to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. John from tripadmit.com. They provide a digital ticketing platform enabling activity and tour operators to sell their services online.
Thank you, Jen. I suppose our biggest learning from 2020 was essentially to talk to our customers, but more importantly, to listen. We were a travel tech company, so as you can imagine, 2020 was a tough year. We were selling ancillary revenue solutions into airlines and the wider travel industry, or specifically around tours and activities. And our customers were telling us that they wanted more control of the activity, of the ancillary relationships. So this led us to building out our own reservation system to enable these deeper relationships. However, what it did for us is it opened up a whole new side to our business that is now very likely to be much bigger than the original business itself. So I suppose it was this customer feedback that led us to expanding our product offering, getting new revenue sources, securing investment from generating the new revenue sources, and now moving on to scale it. So it was a case of, by listening to our customers, essentially, and our customers telling us what, the problem that they wanted solved, led us not so much in a whole new direction, but in an expanded direction from where we originally were. And I suppose our top tip for 2021 is, well, part of it is to keep listening to your customers. You should be doing that constantly anyway. But also what we found is really, really important is to set goals for the business. Like what goals did for us, especially last year, was they helped us to provide us with a direction, but more importantly, they provided us with something that was a constant in an environment where everything we know had been essentially turned upside down and inside out. And yeah, that was 2020 and 2021 for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. A lot of things to take from that, but onwards and upwards. Luke from Bolt, an on-demand transportation platform offering services ranging from ride-hailing to food delivery. But you, or Luke, also previously founded several other startups, including Bamboo, a mobile food ordering app. So you can come at it from a number of different directions. Luke, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jen, and thanks for having me on the call today. So I would say what's my biggest learning over the last 12 months, as you mentioned, like I went from being a founder to a kind of an operator role. I stepped away from the startup I founded, Bamboo, and moved into a new role as country manager of a mobility company in the middle of a pandemic. So leaving an industry that inherently was going through some intense growth in the last 12 months, and then moving to an industry that took a bit of a hit. So the learnings I have, I'm going to kind of bring it back to more of a founder first, and then talk a bit specific to that journey. But something even to this day with Bamboo and being an advisor still to that company, one thing that was so key to their success now is, and then was just being absolutely obsessive about our product, as a complete reflection of us and our ability to prove product market fit. To this day, going through lockdowns where our product dropped 95% of its transactions down to where it is now, which is on a complete growth trajectory. Bamboo's core product has not changed. In the last 3 years, the real product hasn't changed, but we're still serving tens of thousands of customers every week. But if we weren't as obsessive about our product in 2018 as we were then, and our product wouldn't survive now, we wouldn't be able to defend ourselves against all these other competitors coming up. So we focused so heavily on it back then to be our core products and to last to this day. Another thing I would come back to is just kind of on the founder journey is kind of be protective of who you allow on that journey with you very early on, from team members, from your hires to your investors. Who you allow to be part of your business in an early stage is super critical to the success of that business. An example of that is once you have a very good product and once you have a valuable product or a team or a business, it's not that difficult to get investment or get investors, but it's a lot harder to get them out. So I would say choose them carefully. And another one, which is a lot of founders I speak to, this is quite relevant, is you're more than your company. A lot of founders attach themselves to the business they're building and almost see it as a part of their personality. And walking away from that or separating yourself from that is quite difficult. I think it's really important to be unemotional about what you're doing in business and really separate your life and what you want and what you're doing against the business you're building. My top tip would be kind of taking what I've done on the founder journey and kind of bringing it over to the operator journey that I'm kind of on now. Is get comfortable being uncomfortable, is embracing the madness. There's lots of obstacles on the way. It's not easier. The sooner you learn how to cope with those obstacles being thrown at you left, right, and center, and you build up that resistance, or that resilience, the further you'll go. So they're my tips.
Thank you very much, Luke. Now we're on to Ahmed from Avoco, a mobile app that empowers consumers to track, improve, and offset their food emissions.
Hey, John. Thanks so much for having me here. I suppose for us, the biggest kind of learning from 2020 was really something that seems quite simple, but having that focus on our value proposition and the patience to actually try and really validate it and go back to the core of why we started the business. So for us, really being in the food sustainability space, it's an area that there's a huge opportunity there and there's a lot of demand there. But what you also get is a lot of companies approaching you looking for solutions in food sustainability, thinking that you're going to be the silver bullet. And I think we got into a bit of a rut there where we were kind of taking on different jobs that weren't really core to where we saw the long-term value, which was in that changing consumer behavior, really pushing that engagement. and we ended up doing a lot of different jobs that kind of were distracting us from kind of our main mission, where we could provide value to the industry in the future. And I think what happened when the pandemic came and say we lost, I suppose, some of those previous customers, it was a weird kind of feeling where you felt actually more of a relief rather than the fact that you should have been disappointed that you were missing them out. And really for us, that meant that we were actually seeing them as distractions and we need to really just go back to focusing. So I suppose for us, the big thing for 2021 is really getting obsessive, like Luke was saying there, on understanding what is it, how can we make our product really exciting and enjoyable for consumers? How can we really push that behavioral change and that engagement through our product itself, and really focusing on that at the moment.
Plenty on your plate, pun intended. Great, thank you. So we're on to James from Frankie Health. And Frankie Health, it's a cloud-hosted platform that effectively connects employees to personalised mental health support that works. James.
Thanks, Jen, and appreciate the intro and the pun. Always enjoyed. Yeah, so our biggest learning, I suppose, from last year was to how to build a team properly remote that can keep hitting those aggressive milestones that VCs are always kind of hounding you for. My co-founders in Melbourne, we have some of our team in China, Berlin, France, Australia. So we're very committed to remote, and Frankie really took off in the last year. So, it basically since June, we started building that team. And from my experience working in startups in like California, London, Hong Kong, Singapore, burnout is so real, and it really destroys startups all the time, whether, you're coming up to a big pitch or a client meeting or whatever it might be. People burning out is very kind of normalized sometimes in the startup world, and then you add in the remote factor and you can't see people or go out for a drink or go for a game of football with someone. It actually starts becoming even more challenging and more important. So I suppose our top tips would be around how you kind of build that culture of trust and care for each other and for oneself in a remote team. And so some of the things that we did there, which people could actually take and probably implement if you are doing a remote working, there's kind of on the individual level and then also on the team level. So on an individual level, we all know when you're working from home, work morphs into everything, and it's hard to kind of segment your life. And for me, it was about, putting my phone in a different room when I'm going to bed, managing my runs, doing meditation in the morning, trying to put in those slots in your day so I can keep performing at my highest level. And what you need as an individual is different to everybody else, but you got to put in the time to figure out what that is. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to keep executing to the kind of speed that you need for your business and potentially for your investors. And then the second sort of tip that we have for the more collective between you and your team members is that it's so hard to build that connection and trust, especially when you're hiring new people. I haven't met, 80% of our team in person. They've all been remote hires. How do you build that trust and connection? And it's very easy to fall into that trap of just doing Zoom calls with your team. And your Zoom calls are just knocking through, your sprint updates, your financing updates, your customer feedback, all that standard stuff. But that doesn't build trust and connection. So for instance, we implemented this concept of one-to-ones that can't be about work. And we kind of suggest they happen while you're out for a walk or you're out of your home office. And, you can't talk about work stuff within those one-to-ones. And that's kind of two of our tips, both individual level and then also on the team level, like building that connection, that trust, and that concept of self-care.
Really useful. Thank you, James. Anya from Unitec Ai. It's an Irish company that provides a no-code intelligent automation platform for organizations of all sizes. Anya, over to you.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jen and Adam. Our biggest impact was we were on track to close a number of significant key deals with the financial service organizations. And when the pandemic hit, these organizations had to pause to adjust their ways of working to the new normal. But in late 2020, we saw a surge in demand for remote data capture and automation. For example, traditionally, customers of banks and insurers sent document in post, but during COVID, there was no one in the office to open it. This was already $1 trillion problem. So to keep up with the demand, we democratized our data extraction solution. Now, companies that use Unitec to capture documents on their mobile phones, their business team can train their own artificial intelligence models to extract data from unstructured documents. So it's not just OCR, they could do all their complex process with our AI. So, and we could also enter the data directly into their platform without manual intervention. And big demand for this in the UK. We will be shortly announcing a 3-year deal with the insurer. So from my perspective, I see that pandemic is pushing everyone to be creative and be more open to new technologies. We raised money, acquired customers, and hired remotely. So in my opinion, that remote is more productive. In the past, we would have taken so many flights to make this happen. So having this infrastructure in place that allows you to operate smoothly remotely opens a whole new world of possibilities. So if we can shift our attitude from just until we return to normal to we can always onboard our customers, partners remotely, and our process is 100% online is the way to go forward. I guess that would be my tip. And as a result of pandemic, we're also accelerating the democratizing AI into non-technical space, making it accessible to everyone. And that's all from me.
You're keeping busy, Danya, is what you're saying. So thank you. On to Luke from Tune Release and Applaud Live. So Tune Release is a media pitching platform that secures coverage for song releases, and Applaud.live is a booking platform designed for the live music industry. And as well as that, Luke is also involved in Scale Ireland, so he also keeps himself busy. Luke, over to you.
Jack of all trades, master of none. Thanks, Jen and Adam. So essentially, the kind of main takeaways we had from the COVID era was we built a booking platform, invested quite heavily in the music industry, and then COVID hit. You've no prospect of revenue coming from that. So how do you pay the bills? How do you pay the loans back? And the answer to that was to really go back to your customer discovery phase and speak to your end users. And a thing that was spoken about at length every time we had a coffee with them was, how do you promote my music? And so I think what founders are great at doing is reverse engineering what they did before, building processes and seeing what works. So we just kind of reverse engineered a traditional PR process, did that for 8 to 12 months, and then started automating the processes we were doing there. And that's where Tune Release came about. And the second point to that is, don't be held at ransom by the requirement to have developers. I think non-technical folk usually label themselves as, oh, I can't build anything. I have no expertise in the field. The simple answer is to look into no-code tools. You can build a platform on Bubble for 25 quid a month instead of paying 20 grand and build a full end-to-end platform. So there's a lot to be said about bootstrapping, saving your money, getting to a later stage where you can then raise growth capital on more favorable terms for startup founders. So that's kind of my key 2 takeaways.
Thank you, Luke. Patrick from Utility AOR. Utility AOR provides augmented reality solutions for industrial use. Patrick.
Thanks, Jen. My problem, being slightly different from everyone else's, is I need a haircut. And you think I'm jesting, but the truth is, part of what we sell are things like this, right? This is a smart helmet. And when I take it off, I've got terrible hair. I mean, it's a disaster, okay? And then I have to switch to a different one, and people can't take me seriously with this hair. But where I'm really coming from with that is, we used to be a company that sold by going to customers and letting them try this hardware. And they go, wow, that's going to change our industry. And now we can't go and visit them anymore. And we've sold, I think, 6 times more in the last year than we did before that. Now, to some degree, we're a beneficiary of this whole thing, because part of what we sell would fit into the Zoom or the Slack sort of sphere, where we're digitization of industry and people like that sort of thing. We do a lot of audits. I'm looking at you, Alison. I'll talk to you later. But it's been a big challenge for us to change how we sell. There's a lot of new tools that we needed to create, not just in selling, but ultimately supporting the customer when they have the thing. In the past, I or one of my team could go and sit with the customer and teach them how to use our product. Now we can't do that. So we have all these new tools that we needed to create to support a customer, to get them up and running with our tool. And that's been a real challenge, But nevertheless, I think it's important. It's a pity we didn't focus on that earlier, in truth. It's been very important to think about that it's not just the sale that's affected, but it's actually the usage that's affected as well of your product when you can't go and visit the customer. Also, any links for a good barber, put it in the chat there, and that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. We can talk about that afterwards. Last in this section, we have Mark from the Startup Van, one of the most recognised award-winning media and entertainment brands for entrepreneurs in the UK and Ireland. We've gone for a slightly different question for our last speaker, as he's not only founder but also speaking to startup founders all around the world on a regular basis. So Mark, my question to you would be, from your years of producing B2B content, how do you think can businesses such as those that have just spoken can create, really engaging content online for their target audience that's going to cut through the noise in a world where there's so much noise? I mean, in the past year, just so much news constantly. How do you get through that fog?
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, Jen, Adam, thanks for putting this on. It's great. Thanks for having me. I suppose my tips around content based on what we've done, because we went from 0 to over 60 million views with the content that we created. And when people see it and when people ask me how we did, a lot of people take it for granted that you just make good content, where they don't really see what happens behind the scenes, which is understanding your target audience, which is key, knowing where they are, and also knowing what they want. And what I mean by that is knowing who they are when it comes to us startup fan. Startups for us, because Amazon consider themselves the biggest startup in the world, so we're obviously not making content for Jeff Bezos there. So we broke it down to 1 to 3 year old businesses and anyone who was raising seed or pre-seed, seed, Series A and Series B. Where they are, what I mean by that is people would have automatically taken video content, it's YouTube. Where after we researched where the majority of our following was, it was Facebook Live. So we were able to jump on that. We knew where they were. We knew how to take full advantage of that. And what they needed, after doing the research, we were able to find that sales and marketing was the first problem, followed by scaling, followed by funding, and then followed by HR. So we knew all the content that we were making had to be based around that. So my point when it comes to all of that is people tend to generalize who their audience might be and start creating content on that, where we had a 60-page deck broken down on exactly who they were, where they were, how they worked, what they needed help with. And that's exactly where our success came from. And we were producing content, which most people are trying to do, which is on a daily basis. So the more you're going to do it, the more familiar you get with it. But the key thing is just knowing who they are, basically, and not just taking for granted that you know who they are and where they are. If you really dig down deep into it, you start unfolding all the little hidden gems that you can jump on top of. And that is pretty much the advice that I give to anyone when it comes to creating content.
Thank you very much, Mark. And so ends our first session. Hopefully, Adam, I'm not too far over time. We are going to move stateside to visit our friends in Silicon Valley and surrounds. When people think about startup culture, they think the US and more specifically Silicon Valley as the aspiration, but how to get there. So in another jam-packed session, which will be quite the whirlwind, we're going to get input from representatives from Irish founded startups that are based over there or people who have a background in starting up businesses stateside. Without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker. It's Paul of Circle CI. I hope, Paul, I'm saying that right, and Dark. Circle CI makes continuous integration tools that help software teams to release quality code faster, and Dark provides a new way to build serverless backends, making it easier to code. So for the non-techies, that might be quite a lot to consume. Paul, you are San Francisco based. You built a number of startups there. What lessons would you give to new founders who want to follow in your footsteps?
Thanks a million. Quite a few. lessons, I think the main one that people always ask about is should I come out to San Francisco? Is it worth moving from somewhere like Dublin or wherever you are to San Francisco? And at the moment, in this sort of COVID time, there's no better time to be doing a startup not in San Francisco. But at the same time, I would still say that for people, especially with little network, with little access to funding, with who don't necessarily know how to do startups all that well, which encompasses almost everybody, certainly encompassed me when I moved out here. I think that there's nothing like moving to San Francisco, even if you only come for a year or two to build up your network and really start to understand what things are, how things are done. And one thing that's particularly different in America versus in Dublin is there's no fear of failure in Silicon Valley. There's no idea that that you fucked up your startup. Nobody cares. And everyone is sympathetic because they've all fucked up 2 or 3 startups as well. And I'm currently on my 4th startup. My first 2 went terribly. And it was quite emotionally draining. And in Ireland, people are like, "Oh, you fucked up your startup. What's wrong with that guy?" And in America, everyone's like, "Yeah, of course you do. That's the learning one. That's the freebie." So then, when you're looking to actually, what are the tips for actually building the startup? People get distracted. People get super distracted, and all the things that you can do when you're in startup, all the events that you can go to, all the investors that you can talk to. And the only thing that I would say is that product market fit is sort of the gold standard and the only thing that you should be doing in the early stage. And focusing, even from before you start your company, on getting product market fit. So that just means that you find a product that fits with the market that you're creating. And what I mean by focusing entirely on that is focusing on are you building something that you are motivated to build? Are you building something that you're interested and that you can keep doing 12 hours a day or whatever it is you do? One of the mistakes that early founders, especially young founders, make is they build something social, and social stuff is super hard to build. And if you're building TikTok but different, or something in the events or having fun space, that's really difficult. Whereas a good B2B startup, go to a company, ask them what they want, they'll tell you. Ask them for money once you've built it, and they will give it to you, and that's how you have product market fit. And the final thing I'd say, and this was sort of touched on earlier, is don't outsource. People are very eager to outsource their product development or anything else. Don't do it. Either hire or Luke earlier mentioned no-code tools. Those are great options. But if you outsource your product development, you create this huge the iteration cycle of figuring out what it is that you're building. The experimentation phase takes so much longer and becomes so much more expensive. I've not really seen people do that successfully.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Plenty of tips there. So as I said earlier, we are recording. We will share the video afterwards for anyone who wants to watch back. Moving on to Laura from Bobby. It's an infant formula company offering the first European style formula in the US that meets FDA standards. And my question, Laura, to you, another Irish exile. You launched the first European style organic infant formula. Before you set up Bobby, you worked in big name tech companies such as Airbnb and Google. Can you tell us a little about your experience as an Irish person setting up a startup in San Francisco?
Yeah, absolutely. The problem when you don't actually change your maiden name, I'm like, I'm here. Lovely to be here, guys. So I've been out here now about 12 years in San Francisco as well. Big thumbs up to everything Paul was saying. Incredible when you see the difference between the attitude and the ability to fail and get back up. It's huge. What I would say is in starting a business here, being Irish, and I'll take the viewpoint of just how you can ensure you're differentiated and really lean into the Irish side of it. Mm-hmm. Jen, when you shared out what Bobby is, you had highlighted that we are a European style formula. When you get into business over here, you're obviously getting into an industry where there's probably going to be a lot of competitors. So one of the advantages I have found, both in raising money, being able to get it off the ground, and even just the positioning to consumers, is the realization that you as the founder are the early product. So the positioning of our product being a European style formula. In addition to that, a lot of our narrative and how we position ourselves is the difference between what it means to breastfeed a child in Europe compared to the US. And, you know, I think when you meet a lot of Irish founders here in the US, I think that early stage really is about you and what you bring. So a lot of what we put forward is the comparison to what it means to build a formula in Europe compared to the US. The other major thing I would say is when it comes to raising money, it's been a long journey trying to raise money, and the beautiful part of being Irish is the Irish talent and the Irish work ethic has been well set here in Silicon Valley because of kind of the sister community back in Dublin. So when you get in front of investors, there's just a big warm welcome to the fact that, you know, the Irish community has already set what it means to be able to get a company off the ground very successfully without having to name any big names here. You know, they're very well known, and they've set the stage wonderfully for new people to be able to raise money. So yeah, welcome anyone coming over, and obviously use the network when you do come over. It's been wonderful to be able to welcome young Irish folks here and be able to introduce them both to the investing community and the startup community. And I no doubt everyone's just two cousins away from knowing each other. So do reach out.
Thank you, Laura. The power of the diaspora. Six degrees of separation, 2 if you're Irish. Paul from Enterprise Ireland, SVP and Head of Western US at EI, the Irish state agency responsible for the development and growth of Irish enterprises in world markets. Paul, given your role, you get to see the creme de la creme of Irish startups scaling stateside, driving the growth of a 1.7 billion portfolio, possibly more since the last update, of more than 300 companies across mobile, telecoms, digital, media, travel tech, aerospace, electronics, the list goes on. Are you noticing any particular emerging sectoral trends in Irish companies that are entering the market, especially in the past year?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Thanks for having me. Look, on sector trends, absolutely. Look, even pre-COVID, it was clear that a number of end market verticals were growing at pace, including cyber, content creation, collaborative work tools, digital health, telco IoT, in fact, anything connected to the rollout of the 5G network across the United States. COVID has poured gasoline on the growth rates of those sectors over the last year, and will continue to for some time. From our side, though, having said that, there are bigger considerations for Irish founders when assessing the US market than whether the general demand for their product or service is being driven by COVID tailwinds. And when we're working with founders to support their US entry, we are principally, and before opening Rolodexes and making connections, our focus is always around helping them define what is the problem they're solving and whether the value proposition wrapped around that will resonate here. Furthermore, just given the competitive nature of this market, there has to be absolute sharpness in the messaging of that proposition to ensure it cuts through that competitive noise. Once we see a value prop that's in good shape, and again, sort of referring back to the sheer size of this market, we want founders to focus on, defining their sweet spot customer, looking through the lens of that definition out into market, and mapping out where the highest concentration of those target customers are. Start defining an appropriate route to market strategy that's going to best support customer acquisition. And then not finally, but alongside that process, determining the amount of capital that they're going to need to execute on the business plan. And in our experience, when we walk founders through that very methodical process, that is the best way to set them up for success. And you touched on it there, like right now, Irish companies are still opening offices on the West Coast at the rate of about 1 every 2 to 3 weeks. And that hasn't slowed down over the course of the last year, and we probably expected it to. So it's still a very receptive market to Irish technology, and we'll encourage people to touch base with us to see how we can help. But my last word, continually check back in and refine your value proposition.
On to our next speaker, Romy from Mona, which allows users to create a beautiful page to sell their skills and services. As Y Combinator alumni, Romy, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. You and your co-founders last summer secured, I think, approximately 1.7 million to grow your B2C chat app for small, passionate businesses. I'm personally a big fan of what you're doing, so I'm intrigued to hear a bit more about the steps to Y Combinator and beyond.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jen. I know for us, getting into Y Combinator was just a big game changer. It was just an amazing experience to be over there and to meeting, like as Paul and Laura said, just the network here, the mindset to be talking to all these people who you feel are doing amazing things was really, really cool. In terms of applying, there's just an abundance of content. We're really lucky to be living in an age where there's just such an abundance of content out there on the internet, and in terms of within the startup community itself, so many people who just want to help you and want to see you succeed. So, when we were getting up to the interview, we had, people offering to help us, offering to give us mock interviews. And that was really, really special and something that I really love about the startup community. In terms of after as well, having that network here and having grown the network from YC and beyond has been really important for us, getting new users and getting investors. So yeah, would recommend anybody who's thinking about it or who's starting something up to apply to YC. There's also really good programs I know in Ireland at the moment too, like the NDRC I think are doing an accelerated program which also uses a safe. But for me, YC was just a game changer, just in terms of the people that you meet, the network that you get. And I think it's important for any Irish-based startup to be looking at the whole world as your market. So it's why it's important to have a network kind of everywhere.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving to Pork, who is head of West Coast United States at IDA Ireland. Pork, in your role attracting scaling companies to Ireland, you meet some seriously ambitious companies and founders. Are there certain skill sets and traits you've observed in the highest performing founding teams that our audience could learn from, both in Ireland and abroad?
Yeah, thanks, Jen, and hi everyone. Yeah, look, I guess the companies, the schools, the VC money here attracts some seriously sharp people. There's a fair bit of bluster here as well. Not everybody is Steve Jobs. But I'd say there's probably three kind of common traits we see in the most impressive people we've come across. The firstly is resilience. So they back themselves and their vision consistently. So if you think about Zuckerberg stopping all development overnight and pivoting everything to mobile just before Facebook went public in 2012. The second is curiosity. So always learning, always thinking about the big problems. But I think also very protective of their time. And I think that's one thing to Paul's point. I think some of the mistakes people make when they come out here first is that they think it's a casual culture. It's not. It's informal, and you may get the first meeting for free, but you won't get the second, I think, unless you're offering some value. So you really do need to be prepared. But then thirdly, I suppose the key trait we see is that I think the best founders and the best companies, they know what they don't know, and then they hire the best people to fill these gaps. So Airbnb and Stripe, for example, hired some phenomenal people when they were still really small, and this helped them navigate their initial kind of growing pains, including the likes of Laura Hughes, I would say, who worked on that initial landing team in Ireland with Airbnb. And I think Irish people here do really well in the Bay Area because they realize that being smart is a given. IQ alone is not really enough. You need to have the initiative, I think, to go ahead and to solve the problem. And then also the emotional intelligence to see the bigger picture and to pull it together. And they work really hard, which is also part of it. So I think that's also why we see Ireland being a very successful hub for Silicon Valley startups. And at IDA, we know that if we can get a company to start even with a small landing team and they can hire the right people on the ground, they'll kick on from there.
Okay, thank you, Pork. Plenty of food for thought there. On to Connor from Interpreter Intelligence. As founder, Connor, so Interpreter Intelligence, apologies, it's an interpreter platform for interpreter service delivery and back-end business management. And the question to you, Connor, is as founder of the #1 interpreter platform for managing language services, it's guaranteed that Trojan work has gone into getting to this level in just 10 years, which is sort of harking back to what Porrick has just said. It takes more than just smarts, a lot of work. Reflecting on the journey to date for any Irish startups aspiring to reach a similar level of success, what would you say the activities core to your success have been?
Okay, thanks, Jen. That sounds quite a mouthful of a question there. So I guess the first thing when it comes to success, we often think of metrics. So for me, my most recent and greatest metric has been invited to a conference to speak on a panel. So, check that box now. But if I might, I could reframe the question perhaps, because success is a relative term. So maybe if I could say, what's been the reasons behind us surviving to this point? I think we're successful from our perspective, but, are we successful to a big VC out there, to other companies? It's in the eye of the beholder. So as a bit of background, we're a bootstrap company. We have, we're headquartered here in San Francisco. We've got a small team in Ireland, in Cavan, and then also a small team in Argentina. So when I think about what's, been the reasons we've been able to get this far, first off is the market that we're in. I think whether it was serendipitous, certainly wasn't necessarily strategic. We ended up in a market that's a little bit off the beaten track. So we don't have a huge amount of competition in the space. It allowed us, when I started the company on a part-time basis 10 years ago, to really get a foothold in, to establish our brand with customers and get known. The second thing probably is customer development. So what we did successfully and continue to do successfully is we went deep with these customers. So we really listened to them, understood what they needed. If we were more of a product-focused company in our early history, we probably wouldn't have gone as deep with these customers. And that allowed us then to, again, build that foothold, do features that perhaps competition wouldn't have built. And that was the second big thing. So we basically said yes to a lot of things that customers asked for. And the third thing is we have exceptional customer service. So when you say yes to a lot of things, you end up bringing more baggage than you'd like as a software development company. So things don't always get delivered on time. Perhaps as a bootstrap company as well, maybe quality is that, it could be improved. So you need to have exceptional customer service to sort of fill that gap. There's nothing better than, a customer that's maybe unhappy about a certain thing. If they can get somebody on the phone that understands their problem, is there to fix it in a partnership, collaborative way, that can get you a long way. And I think the fourth thing that I've seen, we had an opportunity to build a foundation for us in our company. But then at a certain point, the good times don't last forever. The competition arrived in the space. And I will say that the arrival of the competition has a way of refocusing your vision for the company. It's not that we've gotten complacent, but I think just, a well-funded competitor in the space with good marketing, good product market fit, makes you think of the problem in a whole different light. So they're the four, again, the market that you're in, going deep with the customers, exceptional customer service, and then the arrival of the competition. The last thing I'd say just in wrap up is the things that got us to a certain point in our history, so saying yes to a lot of customers, they can also be a burden when it comes to scale. So I think as a company, you need to decide, okay, well, where are you going? What's the future? So in the last couple of years now, we've tried to more focus back on being a product company. So we're starting to say no to customers. The challenge with that is that you have to make sure you build a big enough moat, a deep enough moat to protect your business when you then start to have to focus more on the product. And we're in that transition at the moment.
Thank you very much, Connor. Again, I'm glad that we have a video so I can go back and go over all of the points. Plenty of learnings there. Our next speaker is Galvea from Collective. Collective is the first online back office platform designed for self-employed people, recognized several times over, or Galvea has been recognized several times over as one of the top marketing people in the US and Europe. So I'm not even quite sure where to start. Her CV reads like a who's who of big name brands in Europe and on both the east and west coast of the States. So Galvea, my question to you, given that you have all these accolades in the marketing space, developing a brand is extremely important in helping a business to build a strong image, give it a unique identity, increase visibility and traction. So if you were to give Irish startups that are on this call a few best practice pointers in this area to consider from day one, what would they be?
Firstly, thank you so much, Jen and Adam, for having me here. It's nice to see you all and so great to hear so many Irish voices, and it's been so long since a lot of us have been home, so thank you. I think, when we talk about brand, It's definitely something that I would say a lot of companies, and I've seen this in the Valley actually, once they get to like 20 million or whatever, they start thinking about brand. But my advice to everyone is always start from day one. And when you think about brand, it actually starts with yourself first. If you are a startup founder, if you are a leader, it's like you got to be that courageous leader, and you got to be out there, and you have to have a brand. So it's like if you think of the world that we're in today, you are no longer who you say you are, it's who Google says you are. So make sure that you have a LinkedIn presence. Like, it sounds super basic, but so many people overlook this piece, particularly when you're a founder. So, you know, having amazing opportunities like you and Adam have offered today, as well as making sure that you're getting your brand out there in panels, is hugely important too. So then the kind of next piece after you've figured out your personal brand when you were a startup founder is really thinking about your company brand. And it's like the simple saying that like Simon Sinek says, and I always go back to this point, is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Super, super simple, but it's like, what is your reason for being? And the reason why is because brand is your superpower. So what's included in your brand? A lot of people think when they think of brand, oh, it's your logo, it's your colors, etc. But it's like so much more than that. Like the company I'm in today, like I built it from ground zero, the mission, the values, the positioning, our collateral, and it really informs even today who are the people that we hire versus we do not hire. Because when you're in a startup, every single hire is so critical, particularly the founding team. And you want to make sure that your values are very much aligned with the overarching brand values. So that's been, I would say, hugely important to nail down. And then having that unified vision for the company across all your touch points, because it really helps build, I would say, that trust and value in how you appear in the world. So a question I get asked a lot as well from startups is, does my business need branding? The shorter answer is yes, you do need branding. The long answer is no matter how big or small your company is, you need something that has a clearly differentiated message. And the reason this really helps is it helps define your value prop. Like Paul and a few others mentioned this as well, just like having a key value prop and product market fit is how you're actually going to stick out. It's how you're going to get that investment, etc. So that's hugely important. And then the sixth piece that I would look at is like content that helps inform the type of content that you build. Developing really good content that helps solve customer pain points. You'd be surprised how far that goes. And how helpful it is to customers. Like the right content on the right channel is like hugely important. And then that kind of dovetails into the community piece. So I think, Jen, you were like the master at building communities. You've done such a wonderful job over the years. But like when you have good content, when you have a good brand, that helps you cultivate a community. And I think if COVID has taught any of us anything, it's about the importance of community when you have a company, when you have a startup. And there's two different ways to build community. One is internal. So it's positioning yourself when you are a CEO or a founder as a subject matter expert in your area. It does not matter what your brand or your company is. If it's B2B, B2C, it does not matter. Positioning yourself as an expert by webinars, partaking in LinkedIn's, etc., or externally by taking part in conferences, etc. That's really helpful. And then the last piece is investors. Like we're just about to have a big announcement in my company. We've had over 100 inbounds from investors, and it's because of all the press that we secured from our seed stage. So whether you're pre-seed, seed, Series A, never overlook the credibility that press brings. So kind of recap, brand is your superpower, content is king, community is critically important, and don't overlook the power of press for investors.
Many thanks, Galvea. We could have had a whole session, really. There's so many things to cover there, but thank you for that. And on to Anya, our last panelist in this session. Anya Forbes, top 100, and formerly co-founder and CMO at Girl Crew, an Irish social media company that provided an online community for women to connect with each other. So Anya, another individual with so many accolades, would be here all day if listing them. You came to prominence a few years back with Girl Crew. The importance of business networks is undoubted. From your own experience of fundraising and scaling internationally, what tips would you give to people at that early stage, you know, seed, Series A of their journey, and how, I suppose, networking and community ties in with that?
Thanks, Jen. And I think it's kind of nicely timed because I'm going to give a little bit more of a practical grounding moment than Galway, who's the big picture in terms of that brand piece, but it's crucially important. I guess the first thing I would say is that depending on where you are in your own journey around the seed, A, pre-seed, etc., the detail that you'll need will vary widely, and it'll also kind of vary depending on your positioning and where you are in the market. But ultimately at that kind of early stage pieces, there's two sort of elements that you should always be answering for your investors. So what's the micro and what's the macro? So we'll start first in terms of that micro. It's really understanding, okay, what is actually the core impact that we're delivering? And then what are the interconnections and the alignments within the business that sort of help drive towards that? I know it sounds a little bit boring, but actually what it helps you to do is really, really clearly articulate what's your value proposition. If you can't articulate your value proposition very clearly, something is misaligned. It either means that your product isn't quite right, maybe you don't necessarily have the market, you're not necessarily driving to the value that you actually anticipated. So just being really, really crystal clear in terms of what are we actually doing is crucial. The second layer then is kind of looking at, okay, what are those key KPIs or OKRs that we're using to tell the story? And they will kind of vary depending on your product, but also on your positioning and the market you're in. Maybe the maturity of the market, you might be a more disruptive technology piece, etc. But again, you're kind of looking, okay, what's the story that we're telling here? So what does the company do? How are we measuring it? And why are we measuring it? A piece that people often overlook, particularly at the early stages, is why are we measuring the things that we're telling you? And why are we measuring them in the way that we are? Kind of getting to that level of explanation really helps sort of demonstrate to investors we've thought this through very carefully. We've identified those gaps where we want to go. And it also helps really set you up as a professional and being a little bit of an expert in the field, because they actually understand, okay, this individual can help solve the challenges and problems that we want to tackle as a fund. And they're also helping to kind of articulate that to us very, very clearly. So in the comms that you're sending out, consider, okay, what are the metrics? How are we defining them? And then what are those nuggets? What are the call outs, those amazing wins you've had, those pieces that kind of just hook people and spark that attention piece? Ultimately, really, you should think of metrics as kind of those details that help tell the big picture. So when you're stepping out a little bit, the kind of the key things that you want to tell are, what's the mission? What's really the vision? What's the big picture here? How are we showcasing our increasing stickiness? So how are we really connecting with our market, with our customers, with our clients and partners? And then finally, how is we actually using storytelling to kind of connect really and truthfully and honestly with what our company does? You'll often see that kind of misalignment in terms of a company may actually be more around the data piece, but they'll be selling a story that doesn't necessarily align. And ultimately, when you're working with investors, you want to create a narrative that is defensible and it actually makes perfect sense of why you're kind of flowing through the systems that you're flowing through and the way that you're flowing through them. And ultimately, investors want to know kind of why is your solution different, and what is those differentiators, why they should be spending their time and their money and their resources helping you grow. So identifying those metrics and pieces up front really helps them to understand, okay, actually you're a good fit for our company, our fund, our portfolio, whatever it might be, and also kind of look at other ways they might also invest. If you think of more corporate or fund investments, they're actually looking for ways oftentimes to solve problems in their own value chain. So working with startups can actually be much more of a sort of a plug and play solution. So it's really kind of an opportunity for you to kind of showcase your expertise as a founder and also the value that your product can bring. So it's kind of moving beyond sort of the market nudging and the tipping points that you often see. Ultimately, I think it's a case of just figuring out kind of those two pieces. And I know it's a lot of work to do, but I think it's quite simple. And ultimately, it's kind of boiling it down in terms of what does our company actually do? What is the value that we're providing and to whom? So think of value in kind of a full 360 model to all the kind of partners and players they're in. And finally, how are you showcasing that? What are the key things that you need to tell your story? What are those underpinning kind of foundationals, the big aspirational, and what is the kind of the journey between those 2 points?
Thank you very much, Anya. I should be taking notes, but I will, as I said, go back over and watch the video again. Thank you for that. That brings us to the end of our whistle-stop tour of Silicon Valley. Stateside, back to Ireland now. We are going to have a quick chat with different startup organisations and that are based in Ireland that help Irish startups or those with startup aspirations to get from idea to launch and scale. So we will be following up with all attendees after the event, and I know that Adam is including links in chat to these supports. So yeah, without further ado, ready, set, go. Our first speaker in the Silicon Island panel discussion is Carol from Junior Chamber International, and many people listening will know that JCI Ireland is a voluntary worldwide independent personal development organisation for young professionals, but also entrepreneurs between 18 and 14. And in 2021, JCI Ireland is launching a number of new programs to help entrepreneurs. So Carol, can you tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jen. So thanks for having me today. Yeah, before we jump in to talk about the program, just a brief background of what Jsi is. If you have never heard about us, Jen already, give us, a little bit of background information. So Jsi stands for Junior Chamber International. So we are one of the world's largest leadership development organization and the global networks for entrepreneurs and young professionals with around 200,000 members worldwide. So this year we have two new initiatives, new programs in Ireland related to the startup community that we would like to support the Irish startup scene here. So the first one is Hello Global Startup Project, so which is a series of the activities online that we would like to connect the Irish startups with the global startup community, and also the relevant industry partners, investors around the world, making sure that making use of the powerful Jsi Global Network and our partner World Business Angel Forum. The second project is the Rising Star Young Professional Development Program to provide the global leadership and also the management training for the founders and also the young managers, in some of the other companies. So some of the topics are like cross-cultural team communication, team motivation, project management, CSR, UN global goals, etc. So it will be great for a lot of you to have an inclusive supporting network to help all of us to grow and learn from the fellow fellow founders. So of course, JCI Ireland, we have a lot to offer. We have an online JCI Open Night this Thursday evening. So just in case if you are interested in getting involved in JCI or want to know more about the project, so feel free to jump on to that Zoom call. So I think Adam is putting a link in the chat, so you can just register on the JCI Ireland website. But of course, if you would like to get involved in some of the project and become the partner, so feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and definitely we can do a lot more to support the Irish startup community here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. That was a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So moving from Carol on to Jean from Startup Boost, which is a global tech startup pre-accelerator program that aims to lead pre-seed stage startups towards accelerators, investment and revenue. Firmly rooted in the startup ecosystem here in Dublin, I suppose in a broader Irish context. Jean, you'll be familiar to many on the Zoom webinar. For those who haven't yet looked at or potentially considering an incubator, pre-accelerator or accelerator, can you maybe give us an idea of what you would see as the main pros and cons in participating in a remote climate?
Sure thing. And Jen, first and foremost, mega congrats to you, Adam, and the rest of the team today. I think it's great bringing everyone together while we're apart. So none of this is easy. So a major congrats on that. For those of you that haven't come across this before, Startup Boost is a pre-accelerator program. So we're right at the very start. You've had an idea, you've worked with friends and family, you want to get that MVP up to the next level. And really, we find the best founders around the world. We run 2 programs a year in 15 different locations in the United States, Canada, Europe, UK, and Africa. And last year, when COVID rolled in, we were about 4 weeks away from running our program and had that little time to go and retool everything that we do, which is normally in person, like a traditional program, and move it to going remote. So I think in terms of Jen and what you were saying there, I think the benefit of something like a pre-accelerator and the next step being an accelerator, which we'll hear later on from some of the speakers, is that it is, what we find with a lot of the people that go to our programs is this is the first step. This is the first time they're really getting into business in a meaningful way, or in a way that they're the sole responsibility of making this all happen. So I think in the move to remote, there's been positives and negatives, and I think there's kind of three of those that I'd say is top of mind at the moment. So first of all, I'd say remote is better access. So what I mean by that is last year in Ireland, we used to run a Dublin program because we had an office space that we'd bring everyone to, and that's where we'd run the program. We had the opportunity to make that island wide. And I think that goes a step further in a lot of our other programs, because we can get speakers and mentors that we'd never have access to otherwise, mixing and mingling and being able to impart their knowledge onto all of our startups. So I think there's a benefit to remote. Definitely one is better access. I think two, I'd say make sure to make friends even while you're apart. And what I mean by that is a big part of what we do is bringing cohorts of people together that are at the same level and want to learn from each other because they all have unique skills. So I think if you are participating in a pre-accelerator, accelerator, whatever that is, if your accelerator will have a lot on their plate as it is, so maybe take that step and put your hand up and bring your cohorts together, organize coffees with people, get to meet people. It's important to build those bonds of camaraderie while we're still apart. And I think third is getting comfortable with pitching online. So a huge body of work that we put in last year was to map out how do we turn an in-person process into a meaningful non-in-person process. There's a lot of work that we put into it, but what I would say is getting used to all the different tools that are out there, really practicing using free tools like Loom, record yourself, just get used to it. Getting your point across the best of times is tough when there's no one around you for visual cues. It is even tougher. But I think that is definitely one of the areas that I would recommend. I think outside of that, they would be the main points of some of the benefits and some of the things definitely to watch out for. So Jen, over to you.
Thank you, Jean. We're going to just speak with Menno from the NDRC. So it's fitting, leading on from Jean or Jean's talk. It's national, NDRC is a national startup accelerator program for globally ambitious tech entrepreneurs in Ireland, powered by Dogpatch Labs. Menno, building on your bio, can you provide a bit more specific information around how the NDRC can help said globally ambitious tech entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jen and Adam, thanks so much for having me today, and great to be talking to so many people over here. So NDRC, Ireland's National Accelerator, we support startups in a multiple different ways. So the first thing that we do is we support really early stage entrepreneurs, just like Jean was talking about, collaboratively with him through multiple different ways. So we run weekly office hours where once you have that idea, you can just go up to someone from one of our team and talk to them and just get a little bit of feedback on your idea, where to go next. Then the other thing that we also do is we run quarterly founder weekends where you can just come and hack on your idea for the weekend, right? And get some feedback, meet some other mentors, meet a potential co-founder, right? Which is really important and really hard to do in these days. And then also we run a pre-accelerator across Ireland. So we run that in partnerships with regional hubs in Kerry and in Galway and in Cork, and just to help entrepreneurs further. Then the other thing that we also do is we run an accelerator. And in the accelerator, we help startups grow and help them raise funding. We do that through two ways. First of all, we invest for startups 100,000 euros uncapped via a safe with a 20% discount, so that's a great way to already get some money in. But the most important thing is that we provide access to entrepreneurs and residents and mentors. And actually some of the mentors are on the call today, such as like Romy or Gelfia or Laura, and they help you really grow your company, because these are the people that have already done it and that will be able to give back to you to avoid the mistakes that they made, to avoid them from you making. And then the last thing that we also do is we organize master classes. And master classes, they're a little bit different, but they might be interesting for some people that are on the call. Master classes are for people that are not running a startup necessarily, but that want to support a startup. And so we run these monthly sessions where we help you learn how startups work, right? Either on how to be a good mentor or on how startup ecosystems work. And so that's what we all do. Applications are open for the accelerator right now, so if you want to go ahead and apply, I think Adam is going to put the information in the chat, but would love to have a chat with anyone that wants to learn more.
Thank you, Menno. Yes, and I can see that Adam has already shared that link in the chat. So next on to Andrea from Swoop, a technology platform for small and medium businesses seeking finance in the form of loan, equity and grants. Andrea, it's quite a time to be building a business. My question to you is, I mean, you're obviously dealing with startups at all stages of the startup journey, and based on your knowledge of the current funding and savings options available for businesses in the UK and Ireland in particular, have you any pointers regarding how startups can maximize their chances of success with any funding application?
Yeah, I think my top tips would be what I call be money ready at all times. What I mean by that is at all times, have it as your default position that you're raising money so that you're always ready. So have your latest management accounts, have your latest set of filed accounts if you have any legal agreement you sign, put into a data room, have a contract summary, have everything ready as if you are going out the door looking for investment or if you're going out the door looking for a loan, because you never know when these things arise. And when they do, the fact that you have it all sitting there is just such a relief to you. It's also really useful because investors a lot of the time make decisions on how investable you are based on how fast you return to them with questions. So if they come back to you and they say, this looks interesting, can you send me your latest accounts? If you take more than a week, you're going down their spectrum of investable entrepreneurs. It's also a really good way to keep check of your business. Am I on track? Did my management accounts equal what my budget said, etc.? So being money ready at all times. It happened to me. I'm always preaching be money ready, and thank God I was. And we were trying to close a round, and we had in the UK there is SEIS, EIS investment, which is like EIIS in Ireland. And this group were sitting next door to us in an office, shared office space. We knocked on the door and said, we've got 50 grand left. The deadline, the tax deadline, was the following day for the relief to be relevant to them. We got the deal done in 24 hours, and they were like, I cannot believe the amount of due diligence you sent us within 24 hours. So you never know who's going to pop up. So be money ready is my key one. The other thing is, to anyone who's in Ireland thinking they're only relevant to the Irish investor market, you can raise under the SEIS, EIS scheme in the UK. So Swoop is headquartered in Ireland, subsidiary and branch in the UK, and we have utilised both markets in the early stages of our seed stage to maximise both markets. Ireland's brilliant for LEOs and grants and accelerators. UK is great for startup loans and SEIS investments. So think wider than Ireland. Think Ireland, UK for your seed, and be money ready.
Thank you, Andrea. In my dreams tonight, I'm going to be repeating be money ready. Yes. But that's, hard to forget. Moving on now to Julian from the Guinness Enterprise Centre, which is a business incubator for ambitious and innovative companies managed by the Dublin Business Innovation Centre. Julian, particularly interested in your Co-Connect programme, collaboration between the GEC and enterprise centres around Ireland, and also the GEC's University Partnership Programme. So it would be great if you could tell us a little bit more.
Sure, thanks Sonia and Jen, and congrats on a fantastic turnout to yourself and Adam and the whole team for today. So yeah, for those of you that don't know, the Guinness Enterprise Centre is an incubation space for startups and early stage companies based in Dublin 8. We've just completed an €11 million expansion, increasing our capacity to 100,000 square feet with over 750 desk space. As well as the usual supports for startups such as mentorship, access to finance and various networking and community initiatives, we also run a series of programs, as you mentioned, Jen, as the Co-Connect program and the GC University program. So currently the GC is working with over 40 enterprise centres nationally through the Co-Connect program. The program offers startups and hubs across the country the opportunity to use the GC's hot desks, meeting rooms, attend events and network with other entrepreneurs. So instead of travelling to Dublin for work and being stuck in a hotel lobby or a coffee shop trying to have meetings, the GC is providing that home away from home to all entrepreneurs across the country. This connected network of hubs is guaranteeing the continued sharing of knowledge and collaboration to ensure that companies stay resilient,
grow and scale locally, and continue to create jobs and drive businesses throughout Ireland. The Co-Connect programme also offers startups and hubs across the country the opportunity to participate in the GC's award-winning university programme. These collaborations with global universities can be anything from strategic business projects to internships or collaborative research projects. From this, we've seen not only our own GC clients, but also startups from regional hubs succeed in scaling their businesses by partnering with some of the top universities such as Cambridge, Yale and Fordham. Lastly, we also run another programme called the Prosper Series, and for any CEOs in this call who are originally from Kerry, Limerick or Cavan or other counties outside of Dublin, reach out to us and get involved in supporting businesses in your county. So that's a quick run around of it all, but for anyone who's interested in any of our programmes in the GC or being part of the new GC's chapter in the community, please feel free to connect on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Julianne. I'll follow up afterwards and ask, am I eligible if I'm half Limerick?
We'll let you in.
So next we have David from Local Enterprise Office, of which there are 31 located around Ireland, and they provide startup support for new startups as well as small businesses, and it's often seen as the first stop on your startup journey. So David, for many startups, as I said, it is the first stop for budding entrepreneurs, and I know that the Leo has a whole host of supports available, but can you maybe provide a very brief idea of the kind of assists available to individuals, I mean, pre and maybe since COVID?
Yeah, cheers, Jen and Adam. Thanks for a great event today. I suppose an unsung hero is down in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. Hannah, big thumbs up to you as well for putting a lot of it together. I have to name drop yourself. So look, I suppose we're also, I'm from the Local Enterprise Office in Dublin City, and we're also located in Dublin 8, the same as Julianne. There's a network of 31 throughout the country, so from all the highways and byways, everywhere is covered. I suppose before I get into the supports, the biggest validation for ourselves is that a lot of actually clients that would have come through the Local Enterprise Office have actually attended today, but a lot of them have actually spoke, and it's great to hear some of the success stories that they've had, and indeed the pivots that they've had to navigate the challenges over the last kind of 14 months or so. So the Local Enterprise Office, You've mentioned our kind of our strap line. It is the first stop shop. It's something that a lot of people that I would know that I've presented to before, I can see their eyes kind of glazing over ever so slightly, but it is a tagline that we'd use to expand upon that. So really, what do we do? So it's twofold, the kind of supports that we do. So the first piece is investing in you as a promoter. So that's through soft supports. So it's through subsidized mentoring, which is conducted virtually. It's through subsidized short courses. So for no more than kind of 40, 60 euro, you can get a course in marketing or digital marketing or social media marketing or wherever it is. Or indeed, it's through subsidized training courses, which generally take a longer kind of period. So in 6 to 8 weeks, for example, over a Start Your Own Business course, which is a crash course. The other side of the house then is the funding side. So that's the hard supports and the financial support. So again, we give funding, we take no equity, absolutely none whatsoever. So it's very much prevalent that you should be engaging with us very early on to kind of scale what that idea is. We've 3 flagship grants that we provide. So the first one is a feasibility study. So that's up to 15,000 euro to really pop your head above the parapet for the first time and investigate what the idea is that you're looking to do and get some very early stage validation for it. The second side of that, or the second and third flagship grants that we have, are really around employability. So I heard a lot of people, and particularly Paul, speak earlier about getting skill sets in-house and creating a lot of the product that you're doing in-house. And we'd see a lot of that through our primary and business expansion grants. So that's essentially a contribution towards a salary for you to take somebody else in to work with you in the business. There are 3 kind of flagship grants. We have a number of little smaller ones in terms of a trading online voucher, which is very much around website development and helping you develop your online capabilities. But what I would suggest is, as we are the first stop shop, you should be engaging with us if you have an idea, if you're even thinking of something, or you're very early on that journey. The clients that we would cover, and I know from looking at the portfolio today, or the list of attendees today, is turnover less than 2 million and staffing turnover less than 2 million and staffing levels less than 10. So I think that encompasses a lot of the attendees that are here today. So I'd encourage you, Adam's just popped into the chat function, to go on to localenterprise.ie and investigate who your local enterprise office is and to connect with them.
Thank you, David. And now, last but certainly not least, Michael, from Enterprise Ireland, the Irish state agency responsible for the development and growth of Irish enterprises in world markets. So, Michael, as part of the HPSU Accelerate team at Enterprise Ireland, you're working with early stage, high growth companies that have the potential to scale. And in terms of what you're looking for, a few pointers, please, or around what are the core activities startups on this call should focus their energies on if seeking to avail of EI supports, and be talking to you.
Hi guys, and thanks a million for having me, Jen. Look, as you mentioned, our state agency, we were set up essentially to help companies export overseas, and through that create high quality jobs within Ireland. So the kind of a technical answer, if you want to be a HPSU, is we'd expect you to be a company that's export focused, looking to employ about 10 people and have about revenues about 1 million within 3 years, 1 million or more preferably. That's the kind of the technical answer, I guess. In reality, the companies you look for, the kind of questions we'd ask would be very similar to what any other investor would look for. We're looking for, companies with a strong team, with domain knowledge, that are credible. We would be looking at who their co-investors are. We'd be looking at how clear they've thought through the sales strategy and how they're going to grow. So I guess the real difference for EI is that we're probably more focused on the job side of the process than a traditional investor would be. But I kind of say, look, there's a kind of a perception that EI is just, the state investor, and obviously investing is an important part of what we do, but we have a variety of other services we offer startups. We'd be kind of the next stage up from the LEO. So we'd be kind of working with companies as they go from that kind of early stage into the big time, into the SME stage. We'd offer a kind of a variety of grants and supports. We work with companies to make themselves investor ready. And we're also doing a larger initiative right now to kind of draw together the entire startup ecosystem. Like, as you can see from the previous speakers, there's so much going on out there. And I could understand if many people on the call would be kind of confused as to what stage they're at. Like, should they be going to Gene? Should they be going to a pre-accelerator? Should they be going to the NDRC, to EI, or to the LEO? And so we've created a new initiative called Start in Ireland. So it's just about to launch this week, but we've got a little sneak preview for people on the call. If you Google www.startinireland.com, you can see the site. So it's kind of a single portal that combines all the different supports across all the different agencies, but both public and private, into a single location. And through a series of steps, companies can kind of decide as to what stage they should be at and what services are relevant for them. So I'd recommend anyone on the call checking out startinireland.com, a brand new service. It will be growing over time, but rather than having to look at many places to find the links, you can now look at a single location to bring it all together.
That's great. Thank you, Michael. I'll be checking out startinireland.com after this call, and no doubt Adam will also share it in the chat. Adam, thank you to you, also to Hannah Vaughan, Ben Cuthbert and Alex Gearan for all your help on putting things together. Over and out.